Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really cool. This idea that ancient myths might just be one of the most powerful learning tools ever made. We're going to see how a simple story can teach you complex words way better than any old flashcard. So let's get into it.
So, have you ever been there? Staring at a list of vocabulary words, just trying to force them into your brain? It's so frustrating, and honestly, kind of boring. And let's be real, most of the time, it doesn't even work. You cram for a test, and then, boom, a week later, it's just gone.
But what if there's a much better way? Well, our source material for this explainer is a script called The Flame of Vesta's Hearth. Now, on the surface, it looks like a classic myth about a Roman goddess. But if you look just a little closer, you realize it's actually this brilliantly designed tool for making really difficult words totally unforgettable.
Okay, so to really get why this story method is so powerful, we first have to talk about why the old way, the traditional way, fails. Let's break down the problem with just memorizing word lists. Just look at these words. They're just floating in space, aren't they? They're totally abstract concepts with nothing to hold on to in our minds. A word like avarice or rectitude. It doesn't have a color or a shape or a story attached to it. It's just a label you're trying to slap onto a definition. It's no wonder they're so tough to remember.
Now compare that sterile list to this one line from our script. All of a sudden, the word malice isn't some abstract idea anymore. Nope, it's the reason, a specific character. This rogue satyr, Sylvanus, does what he does. The word has a purpose now, it's tied to an action, and it has a consequence. It's part of a story, and trust me, that makes all the difference.
And this brings us right to our source material. The Flame of Vesta's Hearth isn't just a bedtime story. You could say it's a myth with a mission. Yeah, its job is to entertain, for sure, but it's also built to teach, weaving vocabulary right into the engine of the plot.
So here's the setup. We're in ancient Rome, and the sacred flame of the goddess Vesta is dying out. And this isn't just, a minor inconvenience. This is a sign of absolute doom for the entire city. So our hero, a Vestal virgin named Livia, has to save her home from what the story calls a great calamity.
And boom, right there, the story delivers its first lesson. The word is calamity. But instead of just reading that definition, we now have this powerful image to connect it to, a dying flame, a city on the edge of disaster. The plot itself is the example. I mean, that's just smart.
So, how does the story keep this going? Well, we're about to follow Livia on her quest, but we're not just looking at the plot. We're going to see it as a journey through vocabulary where every single step is designed to teach us a new word.
So her quest follows that classic hero's journey structure, as you can see. But what's really clever here is how each of these stages, seeking out wisdom, navigating a tricky forest, facing a final challenge, isn't just a plot point. Think of them as vocabulary modules in disguise. Okay, so in the forest, Livia finally meets our villain, the satyr Sylvanus, the guy who stole the sacred ember, and he immediately tries to tempt her, which basically tells us everything we need to know about his motivation. He doesn't want power for some grand cause, he just wants stuff, wealth.
And that motivation? It has a name: avarice. And here's the brilliant part. Sylvanus becomes this walking, talking definition of the word. He is avarice personified. You don't have to memorize excessive greed for wealth anymore. You just have to remember the greedy satyr. So much easier.
But Livia, our hero, she's not having it. She doesn't fall for his tricks at all. Her response is super firm, and it reveals her own character. She calls him out not just for his greed, but for his pride, his hubris, and she doubles down on her own commitment to her duty.
And this is what shows us that Livia isn't just, the good guy. She's defined by very specific virtues. Her refusal to give up, her persistence even when she's tempted, that's a perfect demonstration of tenacity. She embodies this word just as much as Sylvanus embodies his. And this chart, this perfectly illustrates the story's core teaching mechanic. The central conflict isn't just good versus evil. It is literally a battle of vocabulary words. On one side, you've got Livia's virtues, her devotion, prudence, tenacity, and rectitude. And on the other, you have Sylvanus's vices, his malice, guile, avarice, and hubris.
By setting these words up as opposites, the story makes them so much easier to learn and remember as these little thematic pairs.
So Livia outsmarts the villain. She overcomes all his tricks. But the story's not over yet. The ending, the resolution, it's designed to do one last really important thing, to give us that emotional payoff, and right along with it, our final key word.
Livia gets the ember, she returns it to the hearth, and the flame just roars back to life. It's this huge moment. And then the goddess Vesta herself appears. She praises Livia, and in her blessing, she uses a very, very specific word to describe what's happened.
And that word is felicity. It means intense happiness, good fortune. But because we've been on this whole emotional journey with Livia, we feel it. We feel that resolution. The story makes us experience the actual feeling of felicity. So that happy ending becomes this powerful emotional anchor for the word, making it pretty much impossible to forget.
Okay, let's zoom out and look at the big picture here. We've seen how this myth works its magic, but why is it so much more effective than a boring old word list? Well, the answer is basically hardwired into our brains. Storytelling is essentially a cognitive cheat code. It works because it bundles together everything our brains love, everything we need to form strong memories. It gives us context, which makes abstract words meaningful. It uses emotion to create those really sticky memory anchors. It gives us characters like Livia and Sylvanus to make big ideas like virtue and vice feel totally real and concrete. And it wraps it all up in a narrative, which is just the most natural way for our minds to organize and make sense of information.
So in the end, this simple story about a sacred flame teaches us way more than just morals. It actually reveals a blueprint for learning. It shows us that maybe the key to understanding isn't just about the information itself, but about our ability to weave it into a story that matters. And that kind of leaves you with a question, doesn't it? What else could we learn if we just found the right story to tell?